Hey folks, Nick Jennison for Thinking About Guitar, and today we're going to be answering a question that a lot of folks have asked me, which is, what is that black guitar that you keep using? Well, the black guitar in question is a Maybach Convair 59 aged from the Maybach Custom Shop, and it is my current personal #1. Now, you may be familiar with Maybach as makers of affordable European handmade takes on classic designs like LP shapes, S shapes, T shapes, etc., etc. This is an original design from Maybach, designed by head luthier Nick Page, who I happen to think is a stone cold genius, and it reminds me of an instrument that could have existed back in a previous era of history, but maybe didn't. It's really cool because it's totally unique, but it also has a lot of design cues from familiar instruments. There's a little bit of 175 in there. There's maybe a little bit of maybe a Gretsch Penguin in there. There's also more than a dash of LP. We'll talk more about that in a second. But before we do, let me declare my biases. Now, this is my personal guitar. I am a Maybach artist, and it was given to me by the guys at Maybach very kindly. I would have bought it anyway, but don't tell them I said that. But with that in mind, consider this not so much a review, but just a look at my personal instrument and what I've done with it. We're going to be taking a look at this guitar in its current state, which includes a few additional knocks that weren't there from the factory, although it is a factory-aged model, and also a handful of mods that are subtle but not inconsequential. Now, in the intro, we played a load of gain through my favorite lead sound, which is our Victory Super Kraken, with a load of delay, all that kind of good stuff in a track. Let's take a listen to some isolated style-specific examples. Then we'll come back, we'll talk more about the spec. So now we've heard a selection of tones this guitar can produce, let's talk more about the specifications. And we're going to begin with a little bit of an overview. Now, on its surface, this guitar is a 24 3/4 inch scale mahogany and maple 2-humbucker single cutaway guitar with a 2-piece ABR1 style bridge. I think you know where I'm going with this. And there is a significant amount of that G-style DNA going on here, but do not be fooled. This guitar is very much its own instrument. First thing to note is that it's significantly physically larger than your typical LP type guitar. And this suits me. I'm a bigger guy. I think this looks better on me because it kind of matches my frame a little more, but I also think it has a very cool vintage aesthetic with that larger body, but it's not terribly heavy. And everybody I hand this guitar to is surprised at how light it is. And I think this is in part due to the woods that have been chosen, but also due to the chambering system that Maybach use, which not only keeps the weight down on this guitar, but also makes it incredibly loud acoustically in terms of the resonance when you play it. Now, you're free to make your own mind up about how much that affects the plugged-in tone, but what I will say is it feels exceptionally lively when you're playing it. It kind of vibrates against your chest, and whether or not that's placebo, it certainly leaves me with the impression that it sounds more alive. But another factor that is undoubtedly contributing to the liveliness of this guitar's plugged-in tone is the amber pickups Spirit of 59 set. Now, these pickups, don't be fooled by the crazy covers, are recreations of classic 50s PAF style humbuckers. They're Alnico 4, unpotted, 8.3K in the bridge, 7.4K in the neck. Very classic sounding, but also really smacky with that Alnico 4 magnet. Just a magical sounding set of pickups. And these are not the original pickups that came in this guitar. The original set were 2-conductor wiring. I wanted to do some coil splitting, so Fabian was kind enough to make me another set of the same pickups, but with 4-conductor wiring so we can split the coils. So I've actually done a little trick on that I'll talk to you about in a second. But I also have a pet theory about unpotted pickups, which is very unscientific. I'll just throw this out there right now, but it's a little pet theory. I think because unpotted pickups are slightly microphonic, you hear a little more of the guitar's body resonance through an unpotted pickup than you do through a potted pickup. I'll test this one day, so consider this just kind of like a wild hypothesis at this point. It may or may not be true. I'll find out one day, but it definitely feels kind of true to me. I think you can hear this guitar's body. It may be placebo, but even still, the combination of this super resonant body sound and these really great articulate low output pickups, I think it's something magical for me. Now, we've talked a lot about the overview of this guitar. Let's take a closer look at the headstock and we'll work our way down the body and we'll look at some of the finer details. So looking closer at the headstock, we can see we have this really attractive slim headstock shape. There's a little bit of open book going on here, but also a bit of that Danelectro long, elegant headstock shape. It's kind of a combination of the two. I think it looks really nice, and it's really difficult to get a good looking new headstock shape these days. We have 3 aside Kluson tuners, and this is one of my favorite things about this guitar. It's a little thing, but the edges on these tuning buttons have been rounded off by hand, which makes them feel very old. It's really nice. Now, my only complaint is I really wish this truss rod cover was etched to match the pick guard. Maybe I'll get one of those one day, who knows? But I'm gonna flip it over. I'll show you the back of the headstock where we can see the first of the little modifications I've made, which is the inclusion of this Diodario NS headstock tuner. Now, we know that headstock tuners look kind of lame, and on a beautiful guitar like this, despite how functional they are and how handy it is to have, you don't want to have a bit of plastic hanging off the top, but this screws directly into the screw on your tuning peg. It doesn't affect the tuning stability of the tone. It just means you've always got a tuner on hand and it's not visible to the audience. I put these in all my guitars. I really, really like them. We can also get a look at the finish on the back of the neck. It's a nitro finish throughout, and this feels very, very nice, provided you keep it polished. Now, one thing about nitro is nitro does tend to get sticky if you leave the guitar for long periods of time without a clean, so I have to keep this particular part of the guitar very clean, but it feels really nice. It's a 60s profile neck, so it's not super fat. 50s profiles are available, and I know Nick Page, the designer of this guitar, favors a very thick neck, certainly for this type of instrument, for the tone. Again, you're free to make your own mind up about that. Myself, I prefer the 60s profile. I think it's a little more playable. I also love this beautiful antique looking sunburst finish on the back. Really, really attractive, and a nice little thing for the player. You've got the black on the front and then this finish all just for you on the back. I'll flip it over and show you the front. Now, again, another modification that I've performed myself. This guitar has humongous stainless steel frets. Now, Nick Page is not a fan of stainless steel. I apologize, Nick, but I'm a huge fan of them. I love a massive fret as well. So the bigger the fret, the better. And these are as big as you can possibly get. It's an ebony fingerboard with dot inlays, very unassuming. I think this guitar is kind of eye-catching enough without crazy inlays on the front. So I like the choice to stick with dots there. I'll also show you the side so we can get a look at the binding. Now, this very cool Perloid binding is all around the guitar's body. Again, if it was me, I probably would have continued this onto the headstock, but I do like the way it looks just up the neck and the body too. Now, let's turn our attention to the guitar's body really quickly. Now, we've waxed lyrical about the shape, but I also want to talk about the finish. Now, the finish, again, is nitro. It's hand-aged with a scalpel, and you can see if I turn it just so, we've got this outrageous lacquer checking, but we also have this really crazy flame maple top, which you can see just along here if the light strikes it just right, because the finish is very thin. You can see it sinking into the grain, and that starts to come through as the light hits the guitar just so. Now, this is a really cool thing for me. I love the way that looks when the light catches it just right, but also because this guitar's finish is hand relicked and it's very thin, it's going to start coming away one day. If I play this guitar enough, when I start to wear away the finish up here where my forearm goes, you'll start to see flame maple appear underneath this black, and that is going to look absolutely killer. I love that this guitar is going to age with me. I'm a fan of relic guitars anyway. Again, you know, that's a personal thing for me. I love the way they look, and I love the way this guitar looks too. We have a two-piece ABR1 style bridge, three-way toggle, master volume, master tone. Now, I've also replaced the tone capacitor as well as replacing this pot for a push-pull. Kept the 500K value because I like the way it tapers, but it's been my experience that smaller tone capacitors sound a little brighter with the pot on 10. Of course, you could just use a larger pot value, but I also like the way that cheap small tone capacitors sound when you roll the tone all the way off to 0. So it's the cheapest one I could find, and it is 0.017 microfarads, if I'm not mistaken, so a very small value. Now, this does this very cool cocked wah type trick when you roll the tone all the way off, but something else I've done is I've installed a partial coil split, which is something I stole from PRS guitars. Now, normally when you split the coil on a vintage style low output humbucker, it can sound quite weedy because these pickups don't have a lot of output to begin with, and also they're already quite bright, so you can end up with quite a thin, brittle, very low output sound. Now, I've installed a resistor in the path to ground. There's a different value for each pickup, and what it essentially does is when I pick up this tone pot, rather than cutting the entire coil, it cuts about 80% of the bridge coil and about 90% of the neck coil. And this results in a much fuller, much thicker sounding coil cut, which I think sounds absolutely killer. Again, stole that from PRS guitars. That's something they've been doing for a while. Big fan of how that works. I'll also flip this over very quickly and show you the back, because the back of this body is absolutely gorgeous. You can get a good look at that open pore finish on the mahogany back. Really, really pretty. I love the inclusion of these etched aluminium parts on the back too. I think that looks absolutely stunning. Really gorgeous hand-shot nitro finish. Again, I have significantly contributed to the factory aging of this guitar. I've just put so many knocks on it because I play this guitar all of the time. Again, it's my current #1. I play this loads. I take it out, I gig, I tour with it. It's a wonderful thing. One other modification I performed, which is essential for me, strap locks. Again, you gotta have strap locks, and these, because I'm a bit of a poser, are Schaller aged strap buttons. They don't make these anymore, and I've got a little collection of them because I really like the way they look. It's super nerdy, right? Who has age strap buttons? I have age strap buttons apparently, but even still, it makes me happy. Any kind of shallow style strap button will do. I think they need a little bit of a tighten because they're squeaking away. But enough about the strap buttons. Let's talk more about some tones. Now, we've waxed a lot about how good this guitar looks. Let's talk more about how it sounds. And we'll begin with a forensic examination of the tones that are available on this guitar. What we'll do is we'll do a clean example and then a dirty example. And I'm going to go through all of the 3 pickup positions, including the partial split options. And I'm going to play with the guitar's volume control and show you its taper. I'll show you the tone control and how that small cap affects the guitar's tone. We'll do it clean and then we'll do it again dirty. So there you go, folks. That's been a look at my personal #1 guitar and the black guitar that I keep using in videos that you guys ask about. It's my personal Maybach Convair 59H. It's handmade in Europe, hand finished, hand wound pickups. Lots of hands have been on this guitar apparently, including my own, and will continue to be so because this is the guitar that I reach for 9 times out of 10 these days. I think it looks beautiful, but I'm biased. It's my guitar and it was given to me by the Maybach guys. So do keep that in mind. Don't consider this a review. Just consider this an opportunity for me to show off a guitar that is very close to my heart and some modifications that I make to many of my personal guitars. Once again, this is my Maybach Convair 59H. My name is Nick Jennison for Thinking About Guitar. I will see you next time.